Welcome to the Career Wanderlust podcast, your compass for new career horizons. Today, we are talking with Christine Nyirjesy Bragale. Christine is an internationally accredited business communicator and award-winning public affairs strategist for international nonprofit organizations, large corporations, and trade associations. Having started her career as an international journalist and as a former member of the White House press corps, Christine is an accomplished public speaker, writer, and editor who is also professionally fluent in English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. Very impressive. Christine is also currently the Director of Communications with FHI 360 and has worked with the likes of News Literacy Project, USAID, Mercy Corps, Goodwill Industries, and others. And I'm really excited to learn more. Christine, thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. I'm excited to learn more and get some of your golden insights. So, speaking of which, I'd love to know what has been some of your favorite career advice or career belief that has helped carry you along and elevate you, and why?
So I think the best career advice or career philosophy is that you're always learning. And I really do appreciate that. I've gotten great advice over the years around try something new, figure out where you want to be, figure out what you need to get there and find the path to learn those skills. So I've really tried to do that. But then there's also more specific advice, which is your career is only as successful as what you did today. And
Ooh.
so my other advice, there's a flavor of the month, but the flavor
Mhm.
of the year for me, slow down. I think we live and work in a world where everything is moving at lightning speed. And I'm realizing I need to slow down because the faster I work, the more mistakes I make, the more frustrated I get, and the more I confuse the people around me, which is not a place you want to be, especially when you're trying to earn a living as a communicator.
Yep. How do you slow down for yourself? Because you know what? I think a lot of people have this problem. I think you nailed it. We are in this incredibly fast-paced society where we are just moving so fast. And I see this actually across the board. Is there anything that helps you slow down a little?
One of the things is I'm trying to schedule a lot of heads down time on my calendar. So I'm blocking work time. People, I have somebody who helps me with my calendar. She knows when people need to be squeezed in. But for me, it's really creating that space to finish a project, to really focus and not get interrupted by emails or the Teams chat or the text messages. I don't answer my cell phone, which will drive my husband absolutely insane. Um,
Smart.
but I love to joke. I know it's you. I don't need to answer your call. But that's one of the other things. I think one of the things also that we're really in the habit of is when we get emails is to answer them right away. And I really just decide to take a beat and think about does it require an immediate response? Sometimes it does. But a lot of times I can wait an hour. That person can wait the end of the day. They're just sending out their messages at their own pace. And I can reply at my pace as well without necessarily being a bottleneck.
Oh, isn't that important, right? That's this distinction to note because I feel that when I get an email, like I feel like the need to respond. But you're right. People are sending the emails their on their time and calendar of what makes sense to them. And so you too can respond with the same. I love that. It's like you just gave everyone permission. Thank you for that.
I hope so. It's hard to give yourself permission to do that though.
Yeah.
So I will say, but I'm trying, this is something that I've been working really hard on for the last 2 or 3 months, and it's working for me. I'm reducing my unforced errors. I still make them though. I made a good one yesterday, but there you go.
What do
Um,
you do? What do you do when you make errors?
Um, well, I tend to own it. I'm trying just to not let it get me down
Yes.
and correct it. So it's just up. I made a mistake. I didn't have all the information that I needed when I replied. Here's what you need to know. Thanks very much for your patience. There.
Love it. I just like, can we all and just let errors be what they are, not a huge deal. We all make them. We don't need to beat ourselves up over it. Just acknowledge it, figure out and fix it and move on.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important to note personally. So thank you for that. I love the time blocking. That's actually very helpful because I too can get a little focused on things that are coming at me as opposed to being very proactive and specific about what I need to get done. So that's helpful. Now, what about a story? Because I love a good story. Is there something that's happened in your own career that's had a really big impact on you? It was like a lesson you learned from it, and perhaps sharing the story with others, they might benefit from hearing it as well.
Sure. I have two stories. I think I'll start with one, which is very early on in my career. I worked for a British television network in Washington, and this is my first real job out of college. And as a young 20 something, I knew everything and I knew better than everyone. And I got a little difficult to work with, and I didn't really know, and I didn't know it, to be honest, because I didn't have any self awareness. And I got this really big talking to in the middle of the newsroom, by a correspondent who was over 6 feet tall, and I'm 5'3". So
Mm.
just in terms of
Mhm.
height, the height difference was rather intimidating. And it was, I will say that in the moment, it was a very humiliating moment and embarrassing. And partly because everything that he said was true about arrogance, lack of humility, that I had a lot to learn. But it took me a few days to recover from that. And then I realized that he was right. And I cannot say that I'm always humble, and that I never display signs of arrogance, even though I learned that lesson 30 years ago. But I do work really hard to remember that. Everyone that I encounter in my work, they are experts in their fields and in what they do, and they have deep knowledge that I can learn from. And so I really need to slow down, listen to what they're saying, and make sure to ask questions. As a journalist, I was really good at asking questions. And I find that that's a skill that you get rusty at over time, especially when you're leading a team and a lot of the work that you're doing is directive or prescriptive, and just really needing to take that pause. That was a really important lesson. The other lesson that I learned, and we talked about mistakes, but in one of my roles, I made a very costly error that actually costs the organization quite a bit of money, actually.
Mm.
And it's really, I was doubling down on something. And to be honest, my gut said, this is a mistake. We should pull the plug now. But I wanted to be successful and I wanted to show I can do this, I can deliver this. And it ended up being an abject failure. And I went to my boss and I just, you know, one of the few times that I was really upset but didn't have tears at work, and just said, I really messed up here and this is what it's going to cost and this is what we need to do and this is not salvageable. And I'm, and I was sure I would lose my job. And he just looked at me and he said, I knew it was going to fail. Don't worry about this. Yep, it's a big deal, but we can fix the financial piece of it. I've always worked for nonprofits, so losing money
Big
hurts.
deal. Yeah.
Uh, it's a big deal, but just that generosity in that moment of what did you learn from that failure?
Mhm.
Next time, learn to fail a little faster.
Uh,
And that's where sort of, absence of humility plays in, right?
yeah.
But those were, to me, those were really good lessons. And also to realize not every mistake, there are big mistakes, but not every big mistake is necessarily career ending or
Yeah.
completely disastrous or unfixable. It's just a rough moment in time,
Yeah.
and you can make up for it and redeem yourself later.
Yeah, so important. Such an important message because we all experience this, we go through them. And when you are younger, you do think it's career ending, it feels so big and overwhelming. So I think it's important for younger people to hear these stories from people who've gone before that mhm, they hurt. But but you can learn from them, you can move on, you can grow, and it's gonna be okay.
And
Um,
I think those are also good lessons to adopt, if you're leading a team around recognizing we're all human beings and some days we get really passionate and excited about something and we have blinders on and we don't necessarily see the big picture. And it's really to help our team say, okay, you got to try this and to have that generosity and compassion at work for the moment and sort of and not judge someone's entire career or tenure at an organization based on one mistake.
Yeah. I mean, what did that teach you when you're manager treated you that way, when you came in with a mistake?
I mean, it taught me that mistakes happen.
Mhm.
I think it just really taught me to be kind to people and to be
Mhm.
patient. And I think one of the things is, if I were to talk to him about it today, I think he would say that he probably wishes he had intervened a little sooner or asked tough questions sooner. So I do that sometimes when something
Mhm.
feels high risk or
Mhm.
high visibility, high risk. I might ask tougher questions earlier than I would. But I also think, let people let things play out, have a little bit of patience, and try to help people see for themselves isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So
What I love about a strong leader, someone in a position that knows how to successfully work with people below them in a very positive, proactive way, is that these ripples that they create, they're not just creating it with the person underneath them. It's these ripples that keep going on because, like you just said, as your own self, as a leader or manager, you bring forth these things that you learn from people, what they've done, and you give that to your own team. And I just think that's really beautiful.
I think part of it for me is everybody wants to work in a place where you've got big ideas, really creative, you can be bold, especially, in an organization like FHI 360, where we're working on some really tough challenges around the world. And sometimes you really need that boldness and creativity and that courage,
Mhm.
but you're not going to bring that out of people if they're afraid of getting in trouble when they've failed at something, right?
Right.
To me, the only unacceptable failure is when you don't learn from it and you make the same mistake again. So I think that's part of the thing, that nurturing that, positive organizational culture. We talk a lot about that at FHI 360. That's really how you bring out the best in people.
Mhm. Well, tell us more about FHI 360. What do you guys do? What do you look for in talent? Give us a little overview of them.
We're a global nonprofit with more than 4,000 team members working in about 60 countries.
Wow.
We are very committed to helping all people lead full and healthy lives. And we do that by partnering with local leaders to understand what their communities need and want. For example, there might be a need for support for education or health or the impacts of climate change. If you look at
Mm.
our portfolio, we're really well known in the health space, particularly around HIV care, family planning. We're well known for our scientific research. We've done a lot of clinical trials. Going back to those who remember the 70s and 80s, the Today Sponge, but we have led a lot of the clinical trials and research around contraception
Right.
technology. And we also have a growing humanitarian response team working in many, many countries as well. So
Oh, I'm going to say thank you really quick, but keep going. Tell us more.
sure. I think what drives, we're your typical NGO,
Mhm.
non-governmental organization, right? But what really drives our work and our team is our ambition to, not just improve lives today, but build a more equitable and just tomorrow where opportunities within reach for everyone.
That's great. Fantastic. I love, tell me a little bit about working in a nonprofit. What do you like about working in a nonprofit?
Well, for me, it's always the purpose, working in a
Right.
purpose-driven, mission-driven organization, the sense you're working on something that's really important and you're making a contribution, be it to your community, to your country, to the world, to people, and helping make people's lives better, connecting them to resources, to knowledge, to services. And it's not so much about giving, it's really
Mhm.
about connecting people to what they need, because people are the ones that shape their own future.
Yeah.
So that is something that's really important to us. The other piece of it is that sort of that scrappy mentality of that, those where we tend to always hire problem solvers who have
Mhm.
really bring really creative thinking, who can figure out how to get the most out of a dollar, how to do things efficiently. Not always efficiently. We strive to do that.
Yeah.
I just want to be, I don't want to overstate, but I think so. I think to me, those are things that really inspire me. But being in communications to me is the best job in any organization because you get to interact with everybody. You
Mhm.
interact with human resources and with finance and then with operations. I am regularly in meetings. From today, I was in a meeting with people from a couple of different countries from around the world. which is really cool. You get to meet all
Yeah.
these interesting people. And then my favorite part of the job, which I don't get to do as often as I like, but is to actually visit our projects and talk to the people that we're working with and learn from them and also see the impact of the work and see the great work that my colleagues are delivering every day. So I
That's
was just, for
amazing.
example, I was just on a trip in Ethiopia visiting our humanitarian response projects in the Tigray region. One of the things that we do is we have mobile medical units that go to locations where internally displaced people have found shelter. And the mobile medical units are comprised of a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist, a psychiatrist. Mental health is a really big challenge,
Amazing.
especially for people who've endured violence and conflict. And they have patients lined up outside the door waiting to meet them. They'll do nutrition checks for children, make sure that they're getting the nutrition that they need and growing as they should. The pharmacist is right there if somebody needs an antibiotic or cough medicine. And these are the things, it's access to healthcare in a situation where people don't have easy access, and it's healthcare that's coming to them.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and I would say that the people who are our health providers in this particular region are displaced themselves. They lost their home in the conflict there, and they're looking to give back to help their neighbors and to rebuild community.
Absolutely incredible. Just the beauty of humanity in those situations has got to be overwhelming to
Yeah.
witness.
Yeah.
That's just incredible. I also think about just the team that you're working with throughout the company. All of these people are really passionate about the mission that you're doing, and just thinking about there's not a lot of companies where you have the entire team really passionate, really there for the mission, if you will. That's got to be pretty amazing to work with. What is that compared to other teams that you work with that's not quite necessarily everyone's there for the mission?
No, I think it's really inspiring and energizing, especially in a rough moment. I mean, in every organization, you have days when, you know, the work is piling on, you're drowning in messages, everybody needs something from you and they needed it yesterday, or you might just be feeling a little under the weather or a little low. So being around people who are really passionate and dedicated to their work, to me, is always inspiring and energizing. And the other thing for comms for me, which is what I love about in communications, what I loved about being a journalist is learning a lot about the world and how the world works. So I feel like every day is a mini course and something new. It might be how to early flood warning systems or how to build and how to help a young person build a business and build a market for their business and use their savings to reinvest in their business. Like things like that. I find that really cool. And then the best part is I will say when you talk to people, be it our scientists and researchers, our technical advisors, or the people who are participating in our programs, when they talk to you, it's such an honor and a privilege that they're sharing their story and their insights and their knowledge with you. So for me, I'm always just in awe. Wow, I can't believe this person is taking the time to share this with me. And yeah, it's part of the transaction in comms. Going to be a story on our website or a post in social media, but it's still an honor to have that exchange and that engagement.
Oh, I agree. I completely feel the same way when I have those types of engagements. You mentioned the learning new things consistently. I love this because it's very true. Things are always coming at us. We are always learning something new. I would love to know on your Ethiopia trip, was there something new that you learned in that experience?
Oh, yeah. So I learned a little bit about water infrastructure.
Oh, definitely.
As part of our humanitarian response work, we have a team, a WASH team. So WASH
Mhm.
stands for water, sanitation, and hygiene,
Super
and
important.
super important. So two things that I learned was one, a little bit about the infrastructure. So in the conflict in Tigray, a lot of the water infrastructure, particularly feeding into one of the major cities, was severely damaged. So I learned a lot about water pumps and water capacity. And I learned actually, so the water capacity is still only at 27% of where the district wants it to be, but it's way up from where it was at the end of the conflict a year and a half ago. And people are getting water only delivered to them only once a week. So you really have to learn to be careful with your water. And this is very real in many parts of the world. But then it was just interesting to learn about the pumps and how they work and how the filtration systems work. And then how one of the things that's affecting the water distribution is the size of the water mains. So they're actually very small because they're very old. They need to be replaced. Things like that. I thought that was really cool. And then another cool thing that this team does is they do a lot of household visits with the folks that have been displaced internally. They primarily visit families that are living in classrooms and schools. So the schools are still in session, but then classrooms have been set aside for them. And so we test their water to make sure that it's potable. So watching my team test the water was clean, it was good for cooking, it was good for drinking. And one of the things that this is a team specialized in water, sanitation, hygiene. One of the things they've been doing is taking advantage of these home visits to do nutrition evaluations. So
Wow.
doing the measurements of children and adults to make sure that they're getting the nutrition that they need. And in just 2 months, they identified about 25 cases of children who were suffering from malnutrition. So they were able to connect them and refer them to services. And actually, we met this one mom and her 1 year old, and her 1 year old was doing much better than the last check after receiving the care. So these are things that are really life changing, right? Nutrition is at the basis of everything. It's what makes your brain work. It's what helps you grow. It's what helps you learn. So I thought that was just the creativity in terms of we're taking time to meet with people and do these household visits. How do they get the most out of our visit? They need more than just knowing
Yes.
that water is clean.
Oh my gosh, so incredible. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I just feel the need to say thank you again. Honestly, I'm just blown away by all the things that people are out there doing. Really beautiful. Christine, tell us a little bit about your own experiences. I'd love to know what's been a really big challenge for you within your career and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges for me, and this is partly I'm a product of the time that I started my career in, but I think one of the big challenges always is that work-life balance. And people talk about it and dismiss it, but I found it particularly when I was young in my career and when I was working in journalism, I found it really hard to balance being a mom and being a journalist and the hours that required. And actually, how I wound up in the nonprofit world and in communications, I went back to work from my second maternity leave the day that the Monica Lewinsky story broke.
Oh,
And I went into the office, and this is before the internet, by the way. I went into the office. There's a little bit of internet, but it wasn't common.
yeah.
It was not a household thing. So I went back into the office in a very cute postpartum outfit. It was a very cold, rainy day in January, and found myself outside Vernon Jordan's office for 10 hours in the freezing cold, dressed completely inappropriately. He was one of Bill Clinton's attorneys, waiting for him to come out. He never came out, surprise. But realizing like this, I can't do this career right now with two little kids at home, and my husband is a journalist as well. So I think that's been one of the things that I've really thought about and that really influenced me. But I feel really fortunate because I've had an opportunity to do different things, and I've stayed long in some places, and then others I've been there shorter periods of time. So when I worked at Goodwill Industries International, we had an amazing public policy director, and together we were starting to build a muscle around media advocacy. And I've been at Goodwill 10 years. It's a long time. I needed a change. They probably needed a change too. And so I worked for a public affairs firm for a couple of years. I really wanted to build out that skill of what is advocacy, what is grassroots advocacy, coalition building. And that has served me really well. And I also really appreciated working in the for-profit sector. I worked for a defense company. And I will say defense companies are very mission focused and really believe in the mission that they're doing to keep the world safe and secure. And so that was very energizing. But I think there's that. I think the biggest challenge in communications when you're working with people that are deep technical experts, like systems engineers or doctors or economists, is trying to get them to use plain language to talk about their expertise. And I can't tell you the number of times I'd be actually retired 10 years ago if I had even just a quarter for every time somebody said, "You're dumbing me down." And my reply always is that I'm not dumbing you down. I'm making you intellectually accessible to people who don't have your expertise. And I don't have your expertise. And I am interested and I want to understand what you do and why it's important and what the impact of your work is. So I think that is in communications always the biggest challenge, right?
Absolutely.
And then bringing a little bit of the personal thing into it was really hard for me. This is a constant struggle, but it's a podcast.
We talk
You
about
know,
these things. Yeah.
yeah, we talk about things. It's how you react when people get upset with you in a moment and you feel like you're on the back foot. And so for me, I think one of the things that I've always worked, it's always been a challenge. I've always been working on be a little bit less defensive and to take a
Mm,
breath and to say, wait a minute, they're standing up for themselves and what they know to be true. And we can negotiate this. And I
mhm,
don't have to, and they're not questioning my expertise. They're just saying, you're questioning my expertise, and I'm questioning their expertise. So I think that's one of the soft. So when you think about these soft skills and how important they are in building those great relationships at work, making sure that you avoid unnecessary challenges and misunderstandings. I think for me, that's the biggest one is really
mhm,
learning to have confidence that we're just trying to get to the same place together and we
mhm.
have to figure out what the path is.
Yes, I love that. Getting to the same place together, right? That's isn't and that's and we lose sight of that a lot of times. It becomes about you need to understand me or you need to understand me, you're not hearing or what have you. But
Yeah.
really the goal is for everyone to come together. So I'm curious because I think that is really a big point, the defensiveness. I think that most people have that in them. It's a trigger reaction that can come up. What helps you deal with that? If someone comes and says something and you feel that defensive coming up, I know you said you take a breath, but is there anything else that you process through yourself to deal with these situations in a proactive way?
And to be full disclosure, I'm still practicing and learning and I don't do it every time. But what that I'm trying to do is to really be pretend that I'm more an objective observer.
Mm.
And so it's taking note of my feelings. And sometimes I'll write down like how I feel by what that person said, because that completely takes the defensive edge off. I'm more of a feeling person. And sometimes that does get in the way of that productive conversation and that productive partnership with the colleagues, but really trying to be an objective observer and just noticing fact. Oh, that comment made me feel defensive. Okay. But not reacting to it and trying to keep that to myself. But part of that, I think, and this is a communication skill that's overlooked because we always think of communicators as talking, writing, communicating. The most critical communication skill is listening, right? And with that comes asking the right questions. And that comes back to slow down, right?
Mhm.
Let people finish their thought.
Mhm.
Even don't let your brain finish a sentence that someone else is speaking and really practice that listening. And we hear a lot about active listening and I don't know, it doesn't resonate with me in the same way. And for me, it's really just slow down. What are they saying? Pen and paper help me a lot and just slowing down, listening,
Mhm.
observing, and putting if I'm feeling on my back foot, I can put that to the side and modulate and ask a lot of questions, right?
Yeah.
And what are we trying to get to? If you're thinking about your audience, what do you want them to think or do after you talk to them or after they read this article? Do you think this is the best way to get there? Why do you think this is the best way to get there? Would you be open to other options? And having more that kind of dialogue super helpful. But this is something maybe I sound like I'm expert at it. I'm not. I'm definitely working hard at it.
We're
Um,
all working on these things. It's practice. Really, as humans, that's what we're doing. We're practicing until it becomes second nature. But it takes a long time for that, and with especially with things like defensive nature and being faced with anything that brings up difficult emotions. I think that
right.
we need a lot of practice with that stuff.
So, Julie, one of the things that you were asking about was like careers and career paths. And one of the things that I think about, this is something that's actually somebody told me, but a career is not a ladder, it's a jungle gym.
Mm.
And I think if people can approach their careers that way, they'll find so much more fulfillment. And it also reduces some of the stress of, do I have to get here? Do I have to advance? Do I have to be? Everyone has their ambition and they know where they want to be, but you can do it one step at a time and also recognize sometimes you're better off going sideways and then climbing up and then maybe climbing back down
Mhm.
again. Because every opportunity is something new, like new doors open, you create new relationships, you learn a ton of new skills and a ton of new knowledge that can just serve you really well.
Honestly, it makes me tingly all over when you say that. I love it so much that it's not a ladder, it's a jungle gym. This is, to me, this is facts. This is truth. And really, the way we speak about career growth, I think it needs to be changed. It should not be a career ladder. It absolutely should be a career jungle gym. The ladder is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And if we just focus on the ladder, then I don't feel like there's a lot of fulfillment happening. The jungle gym is where you find that fulfillment. It's what do you need at that in this moment, in this time in your life, whatever that might be. That changes a lot. Sometimes you might be moving step by step up a ladder, if you will, but sometimes you do need to jump to the side, or like you said, jump. There's so many beautiful, amazing experiences in our careers, in our lives, that by only focusing on one direction, we're going to miss out and probably end up being a little unhappy, not truly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for that. I think it actually, this should be changed across the board. No more career ladder, career jungle gym. Right.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'll sign that petition.
Yeah, get that done. This has been so great. Actually, one of my favorite questions is because I'm just very passionate about the fact that we are always being fed content, regardless if we want to or not. So I like to know what people are proactively feeding their mind, whether that's reading or watching or listening. Is there anything that you consume or have consumed that has had a positive benefit on you, your life, your whatever, your career that could positively benefit other people?
Yeah, I read this book called Positive Intelligence. I don't know
Mm.
if you've heard about
Mm.
the book. And I work for a nonprofit. So if this gentleman is listening, I can't afford your course, but I would take it in a heartbeat if I could. But what I really appreciate about this positive intelligence is so he talks about how we all have voices in our head. It actually surprised me that everybody has them. I thought it was just me.
You feel just, I learned this recently too. It's fascinating, right?
Everybody has their voice in their head.
Oh,
Exactly. So you talked about how it's your judge, and his advice is give your judge a name. Mine is mine. The name for my judge cannot be repeated in polite company. But and to really, when they're in your head, say, "Oh, my judge is talking. Like, why don't you sit down in the corner and be quiet?" I usually say that in a much more aggressive way, but trying to remember that is really helpful because everyone kind of suffers from imposter syndrome, especially in a rough moment, and it undermines your confidence and it undermines your ability to deliver. You're actually very competent and capable of delivering, right? So
yes.
I
Mhm.
really like that. And he talked about there's different personalities in your head, but this main judge, that has been for me very much a changer in terms of how I approach, especially some of the more difficult relationships that I have, either at work or even in my personal life. So
Absolutely. I'm actually blown away because I think I actually took this course. I positive intelligence. Is it PQ? It's the PQ program. Yeah. So in my head, it's PQ because I actually took the program, PQ
okay.
program. But and the book is Positive Intelligence, which I did it all online and I listened to the books. This is actually amazing. Yes. His name is Shazad Shameen, and the book is Positive Intelligence. I actually did take this program and I found it just like you. It was mind blowing. It was life changing because again, I thought it was my only voices, if you will, as well. And then you learn about all of these different saboteurs, like you're saying, the different saboteurs. We all have our different ones. And what I found fascinating was I did this program and I remember reading about the saboteurs. It's like, I totally know my saboteurs. I knew, I was like, oh, I know. And then I took the test and of course, all the ones were up there, but the number one was one that I had not guessed at all. It was avoidance. And I was like, I'm not avoiding things. I head things straight off. I don't avoid. But then he teaches you about the things that you say to yourself in those moments. And it's in my avoidance, what I was saying things like, I'm doing this for them. Like I was telling myself that I was doing these things to help other people. And I wasn't seeing it as avoidance. I was seeing it as this like altruistic thing. But in actuality, when you break it down, it was avoidance. And it was this totally mind-blowing thing that I had not realized or seen in my life at all. And then once it was pointed out to me, I couldn't stop seeing it. And I started making different decisions. So really, thank you for this suggestion because it is an excellent book. I too highly suggest to anyone listening. It's very useful. So thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Great fun.
Yeah. Oh,
I don't watch or listen or read much else that's particularly useful from a work perspective, other than giving me a mental break from work. So, and
which we all
escape.
need those mental breaks from work too.
I love the escape hatches. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
What's your super guilty pleasure? Are you willing to share?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's Real Housewives and the Below Deck franchises. And
Love.
so I have to say, I admire the fashion and I like the purses and gives me an appreciation for my friends and our girls.
Right.
I've gotten to do some girls trips. They are very low drama. There's not, so I appreciate that as well. But yeah, no, yeah, those are the shows that just make me laugh. Below Deck is cultural because they travel to all these great places around the world in the Mediterranean, in the Caribbean, in Australia. So that franchise counts to me as my cultural guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
yachties, but yeah.
it's definitely a good downtime. It's the perfect downtime. Guilty pleasure.
Um,
Yeah. No, Christine, thank you so much for joining me. Before you go, I'm just going to ask you one last question. I'd love to know, is there a personal superpower that you have developed over time? Because we all have ones that we're naturally born with, but is there one that you've developed over time? And how has it served you?
Yeah, I think the superpower that I like to think it's a superpower, but what I've invested the most in is giving quality feedback. And in that, I think of it not just as critical feedback, but it's also about the positive feedback and making sure I'm really specific about
Mhm.
what was good or really specific about the opportunity for growth and learning and making sure I give it in real time. But to me, it's really important, especially when you're working. Part of my job is to mentor the younger professionals on my team and to help them grow their careers and to grow their skills. And so for them to see, oh, what should I continue doing? What am I doing? And to really play to people's strengths. That's the most important thing to me. And then, okay, where do I have a weakness that I can work on? But so I think to me, that's my superpower is that giving the both positive and critical feedback in a way that is kind, but
Mhm.
also specific and actionable.
No, that's really important. Is there any advice you would give someone who struggles with giving feedback?
That is the greatest gift you can give somebody. Nobody and the positive feedback is really important, right? The critical feedback is important because in work you have to course correct, you have to avoid repeating
Mhm.
mistakes. The critical feedback is really important for quality work, but the positive feedback is really important too because if people don't know what they're doing well and why it's good, then all they hear is the negative feedback and then they feel like, "Oh, maybe I'm not that good at what I do."
Right.
So I think to me that positive feedback in a specific way. It's not just a great job. A great job is good, but here's why it was a great job.
Mhm.
And then also I think it helps people feel really valued and connected.
Mm.
And I have such a privilege at FHI 360. The communications team that we have now they are rock stars. They are so committed. They're so creative. They're really talented. They really care about the work that they're doing. And so I want them to know that for me, it's a privilege to be a part of that team and to represent them. And I want them to know why I think they're so good. And so
Mhm. That's
you
great.
know, and then they keep doing it and they make me
Mhm.
look really good too.
Yep. I think that's really important advice. That feedback is something that you giving that's a gift to other people. That's just a mindset shift that I think is important, A. And then also that you do want to have the critical feedback, but it's imperative to have the positive feedback go along with it and continue. That's fantastic. So thank you. It has been great, Christine. I really appreciate your
Sure.
time. Thank you for sharing your golden nuggets with us. Thank you for joining us on Career Wanderlust podcast.
Thank you, Julie. It's been really fun talking with you.
It's been fun talking to you too. Thank you for joining us on the Career Wanderlust podcast. If you find value in learning from others, give us a like and subscribe. If you're looking to grow your communications, marketing, public relations, or sales and biz dev team with the best talent and quickly, check us out at paradigmstaffing.com and submit a request. We are wishing you a most successful and fulfilling career. Until next time.